Okay, so I'm going to do some work on the Kookaburra today. Just going to do some black outlines before I get into any of the colours. And I want to use a really small fine brush. Probably about as fine a brush as I have. I think the one I went for first was probably the best choice. Definitely gonna not use much paint and use a tip, but yeah. Obviously this is going to be slow work because I do not want to rush and stuff this up. It is basically forming an outline in parts, but it is black on white, so recipe for disaster. So I have a reference image in front of me on my iPad that I'm looking at. So this area here is basically just going to have some raised parts of feathers on the white. Just like that. Yes, you could say it's more a stylized image of a kookaburra than like a photograph or a high detailed image, but it's kind of the look that I'm going for. I squeezed out the black paint from the tube. I squeezed out as small amount as I could, and it's still going to be way too much. much. So against the yellow background, I think this works really, really well. As long as I can figure out where to hold it without touching anything that's wet. Okay, so this area here is all going to be solid black, like the rest of the body. And then there'll be like a reddy brown and a blue, which will go on after the black is dried. But the rest of the black is pretty much done. It's just an outline. Maybe I might switch to a little bit of a bigger brush. Just for this final part. Okay, so that is the black of the outline and middle part of the Kookaburra. This won't stay whole black like that, like I say, but yeah, that gives you a good idea of the Kookaburra sitting there on his tree branch. So yeah, I'll have to put the tree branch in soon. So today we're continuing on the Kookaburra frame picture. So the colours for this session are going to be game colour moon yellow for the small yellow highlights, AK sky blue and AK deep red. And obviously this is kind of the colour reference that we're basing it off. So the first colour we're going to tackle is the yellow because it's the smallest amount, like just a tiny dabble, do you? There's just a little bit of yellow around the legs and there's the beak. So I put the smallest amount of paint out and that's probably even way too much. But it is a slightly stronger yellow than the Montmartre yellow that I've used for the background. So even though it is yellow on yellow in parts, it's still going to look okay, look different. But that is also why you do the black outlining, just to give it a bit of form. So there, yeah, even though it is kind of yellow on yellow, it still will look fine. The black definitely gives it some definition. And that's literally all there is as far as the yellow is concerned. That is a tiny amount. I tend to try and spread paints out on my palette rather than leave like a thick area at the bottom. And the reason for that is later on when these build up, you can actually just get like a little pocket knife and just pull them all off the plastic. They don't adhere. So go with that one. Okay, actually I might as well do the red next, seeing as it's on the same palette. Not a lot more, but a bit more. So for the eye, the black, the eye middle will be black again, but I've just done the circle for now. So I'll put the red down, and then when that's dried, I'll do the little black dot in the middle. Okay, so we have some kind of hairline running red bits as well as the white. And the black. So it's kind of a mix. And the same for underneath the eye. Okay. And then, so we're going to do some on the tail running down. Not completely painting over the whole stretch of the white, but the majority. We'll see how that looks. Actually, no, I think I'm going to go the whole bottom tail as the red will look nicer, I think. And it kind of matches the way that we've done the yellow with the beak. Okay, so this area has little bits on the black. It's more like dots. And lines. And then from about there on, it's kind of like half circles. So it doesn't really show up on the black so easily, so probably will need a second coat for this stuff on the black. Although doing it a little thicker, it doesn't look too bad. See how we go. It's meant to be a stylized version of a Kookaburra anyway. It's not like meant to be a detailed, hyper-realistic sort of Kookaburra. Okay, so that's about all the red. How do I like that? There's a lot of white there just by itself. Thinking I might add, make that more going through. Maybe just a line of the red along the top, just above the black. Okay, let's work these dots a bit. Of course, unlike my fantasy models, where when I'm finished with the detailed painting, you know, I'm always doing like either a wash or more often than not these days a dry brush, just to kind of like add a layer of dirt and grime and wear to the particular item. But as this is a present, and it's going to a girl, it's not going to be, and it's not a sexist remark by the way, it's literally, I've got 2 presents for 2 boys and 1 present for a girl. So anyway, it's not going to be having any washes or dry brushes, it's just going to be the detail painting. That's literally all that it's going to be. Okay. Okay. Oh, hey, don't time out on me. Need to see what I'm doing. Alright, so we're going to do a thin line on the edge of the black. This blue does go on the black much better than the red did. And I guess that's also part of the reason why I'm not such a great believer in priming with black. I know it's the trendy thing to do, but when does that ever stop me from doing something? Like, never. Purposely putting some breaks in the lines. You certainly could make them just one long line, but the idea is to have it look more like it is broken up. From there, and then we go back to the half circles. I guess it's like the edges of the feathers laying on one another is the way that I see that. Why they've gone for that kind of look, and I quite like it. And it balances everything out nicely. Like if it was just black, that would look way too dark, obviously, compared to like all the like turquoise and soft yellows that you've got going on. So you don't want that just big blob of black in the middle. So this kind of highlights all that. So the back here, we're just going to go for some lines on the white. Okay, so on the white you see the red better, and on the black you see the blue better, basically. It's the way that that's looking. Okay, so spread that out and clean that off. Final little piece of the puzzle is the branch, the twig that it's resting on. And then the black dot in the eye as well. Can't forget to do that. It's not done until that's happened. So true story, I actually heard kookaburras laughing this morning. Where I live, basically we're kind of like halfway up a hill, not a mountain, just a hill. Don't need to oversell it. But basically at the bottom of the hill there's a little creek bed and a very, very small park, which the park leads into like a nature reserve type area. We have several of those set up around the place, so designed for animals. People can walk through the middle of it. There's a path and you can kind of see the bushland, and then there's a creek, as I said. But yeah, long story short, we do get a reasonable amount of wildlife, even though it's somewhat suburban area where I live. Certainly love hearing kookaburras laughing in the morning. They are, as I think I've said, my favourite bird. In fact, one of my favourite animals. Many, many, many years ago, in fact decades ago, back in my scuba diving days, before I became an instructor, I was training to become a dive master. Anyway, there was this campground area on an island on the beach where we used to set up our camps for the weekend and do our diving based off from there. And as the dive master, I would fill up the scuba tanks. That's one of the jobs you have to do. But there was a water tower, like big metal structure holding a big water container at the top of it, where kookaburras had made the water tower their nest or home. I guess you'd call it a nest, being a bird. And so every morning they would, wake everyone up, and you'd hear people complaining about the kookaburras. Bloody kookaburras woke me up this morning. And I was always like, I love it. There was, a number of them. I don't remember how many, it was a long time ago, but say there was like somewhere between 4 to 6 of them that lived in that water tower. And yes, one would start and then the others, I'm not sure if it's like a leader thing, but it was always one would start and then the others would just immediately start following along, and they'd all be laughing away while I filled up scuba tanks. So it's a very fond memory I have. Okay, so this is, what else is there? There's the black dot for the eye, but other than that, I think it's like 99% done. As far as a gift / present, I hope that she thinks it's a nice one. It's certainly unique and bespoke, and it's very Australian. So anyway, I will leave the recording there. As always, thank you very much for watching. And so this is the final Kookaburra gift, all printed and painted. I will get a bit of clear varnish now just for a bit of protection for the transport, but the painting is all done.